Nearly everybody's heard the story of the Titanic. Almost everybody's seen the movie where we see Rose barely survive the tragedy. Today I'm going to tell you about one of the ship's stewardesses, Violet Jessop, who survived not only the sinking of the Titanic, but a collision of its predecessor, the Olympic, and the sinking of its sister ship, the Britannic. Violet wished to be a stewardess her entire life, but she was forced to raise her 8 younger siblings from an early age. The second she was able to, she left her life on land and became a stewardess herself. She started out working for the RMS Olympic, where she was a stewardess. A few months after being on this ship, it unfortunately came into the warpath of the HMS Hawk. The Hawk was unable to avoid a collision and hit the ship. Fortunately, both ships were able to make it back to shore with no injuries. Shortly after this, whenever the Titanic was ready for its maiden voyage, she was talked into joining it. Unfortunately, 4 days into the maiden voyage, the Titanic struck an iceberg. Nobody took this seriously. The Titanic was known to be unsinkable. They quickly found out that they should be taking it seriously. Everybody was ushered onto the lifeboats. Unfortunately, there were only 20 lifeboats, only enough to carry roughly half the passengers, and the crew was untrained on how to load them, so most of them went out not loaded to full capacity. Violet and her boatmates watched the Titanic sink, taking nearly 2/3 of its passengers with it. They were picked up the next day by the RMS Carpathia, which hunted for hours for more survivors. Upon the RMS Carpathia's arrival in New York, Violet learned that no other ships had been found. There were roughly 700 people saved from the ship, of over 2,000 people to begin with. Most people at this point would never step foot back on a ship, but Violet didn't let this get her down. She quickly joined the HMS Titanic, the Titanic's sister ship. What was once a luxury cruise line had now been converted into a World War I warship, transporting injured soldiers back home. Violet helped these injured soldiers as best she could. A few months into this job, an unknown explosion rocked the ship in the middle of the night. Violet immediately knew what was happening. The ship was going down. Everybody was ushered to lifeboats. Luckily, the shipbuilders had learned from the tragedy of the Titanic. They had added more than enough lifeboats, and the crew had been properly trained on how to load them. There were still 30 lives lost, but over 1,000 were saved this time. After this, Violet tried to live life on land, but within 4 years she was back at sea. She continued this job until she retired, passing away at a ripe old age of 83. Personally, I think this can be used as a great way to encourage people to not let fear rule their lives. She never gave up, despite the fact that it seemed all was against her. She continued doing what she loved throughout nearly her entire life. I think this is a very valuable lesson for anybody who's afraid to do anything, that sometimes it is best to take risks,